Hello, this is part two of my story about my experiences at Hyles College, starting with my background that I went into last week, which is really important that if you didn't see part one, to really get the most out of part two and wonder how I got from where I was to Hyles College to begin with, and why I did it and why I stayed. You'll really need to watch part one. Um, Otherwise, you're really going to be lost on trying to understand how anybody could have stayed there as long as I did, and still come out at this point in my life um, different than they are. But it did affect me quite a bit. So um, do need to cover a lot of ground today in a relatively short period of time. So I don't know how far I'll go, but do my best here. Starting out from where I left off, I was still at my experience in Florida at the first college I went to, Clearwater Christian College. And I was talking some about how we'd sneak off campus to visit and to evangelize and street preach and that sort of thing. And I ended up with a friend who gave me a box of sermon tapes from Hyles College. And then very soon after, a former graduate of, not former, but a graduate of Hyles College had started a church pretty near to Clearwater Christian College. And he began to come on to Clearwater Christian College there and promote his church. At that time, I don't think he had any members, if I remember right. He was just getting started. And he was one of the oddest people I'd ever run into. No, he had about 5 members. And that should have been my first clue by the way that they acted. There was something weird about the college. But hi, Kirk, how you doing? Kirk, whose name means church in German. I don't know if you know that or not. So anyway, this fella came to Clearwater Christian College, and what an odd person. Began not too long after I checked out his ministry. He started being very, very mean to the 2 girls that went with me to that church that I brought from Clearwater Christian College to go visit his church, and just such an odd person. And then another guy that was there was just as equally mean and rude. And I thought, gosh, this is really weird. But when you're 18, you're particularly naive. I still think maybe I'm too naive. I've been accused of being too naive recently by 2 different people. Too naive and not very aggressive and that sort of thing. Not all that wonderfully discerning. So, I don't know. Could be part of just who I am. I don't know. So I left that guy's church and I went to Pinellas Park Baptist Temple in Pinellas Park, Florida there, which is just right around the corner from Clearwater. And Pinellas Park Baptist Temple, that is where Dave Hyles went to church. And I began to I began to get excited about that originally. Okay. It was the first place I'd ever went where a lot of people wanted to go visiting and wanted to go evangelize, wanted to street preach and that sort of thing. So I thought, well, this is great. We had bus routes. We visited the people, and the people I worked with seemed to me to be genuine people interested in sharing the gospel and evangelizing and that sort of thing, as far as I could tell. And then when I discovered after going there that Dave Hyles was the son of Jack Hyles, and I'd been listening to his sermon tapes that my friend had given me. I thought, well, this is a very odd coincidence. And of course, you take things like that as a sign that, oh, well, maybe God's directing you in a certain direction. I don't think that now. Okay. I don't think that's how it works, but I definitely did at the time. Um, so I joined Dave Hyles' Sunday school class, and originally everything was fine. Um, I began to become more and more increasingly frustrated with the college I went to, Clearwater Christian, where most people were foul-mouthed. No one was excited really about doing anything exciting for heaven, or they had no goals in life. Some of them were pervs and just awful people. A lot of them, and only I had a small circle of friends there. And this is a story wherever I am in my life, I tend to be almost one of a kind, or maybe entirely one of a kind, because I've noticed there's just not very many sincere people anywhere you go. Uh, the more you get to know them, the less sincere you discover that they are. They have some secondary motive in their life for just about everything that people do. They're not really looking sincerely from their heart to do what they're doing. But I joined Dave Hyles' Sunday school class, and when you're 18, my goodness, you don't see things that you see years later. They just go right over your head. One of the girls in the Sunday school class had befriended me, and not a girl, but I mean a woman, not like 19, 20 or something, close to my age. And I went to go say hi to her at her house one day, see if she wanted to come to church or whatever. And, she tried to seduce me, very obviously. And, I was very, very gung-ho. She was reasonably attractive. I was very gung-ho for the gospel. I literally turned and walked away, didn't say another word to her. It was one of those where she laid down, hiked her skirt up real high, started winking at me. And, I got the clue. Even at 18, I wasn't that naive. I understood what she was doing. So, but just, I was thinking, I don't want anything to mar my testimony. I'm going to get out. I'm going to turn around. I'm going to leave. And that's the kind of person that I was. I didn't go to places that I shouldn't go. I did my very best to try to keep my honor as high as I could. Nobody's perfect or whatever, and I didn't think I was by any stretch of the imagination. But I did very much intend to keep myself, as the Bible says, unspotted from the world, etc., etc. So you'd think, though, that starting to put the dots together of mean people from Hyles Anderson College, here's a girl that's a perv. These are just, it's like, okay, things should start connecting, but they don't. They don't when you're 18. You're just like, well, people are people. Well, then I decided I was going to make the change to go from Clearwater Christian College to Hyles Anderson College, because I thought, well, people must be sold out like some of the people are in this bus ministry at this church I was going to. And I wanted to hear Jack Hyles preaching, and I really wanted to join the street preaching ministry up there, because they actually had a street preaching ministry up there, whereas I was pretty much the street preaching ministry, at Clearwater. There's a couple other people who go sometimes. And they never did seem to really like what they were doing very much. It was just such an odd feeling being with them. And here's a church that has one and goes into the city in Chicago, street preaches, and they have even more bus routes. I thought, man, I'm in the wrong college. That's the kind of thing I really wanted. That's what I expected from a Christian college. You expect people to be fired up. You expect people to want to change the world. You don't expect lackadaisical attitudes, apathy. I mean, I had that back at home in Portsmouth, Ohio. People that didn't seem to really be concerned about spreading the gospel very much, and were apathetic most of the time. And here I thought, well, okay, I just screwed up. I went to the wrong college. I'll just go to one that really is fired up. So I transferred, and my original major had been history at Clearwater Christian College. I thought I was going to learn to be a history teacher, and while I was there, I was going to be in a lot of ministries. I thought, well, I could still be a history teacher at Hyles Anderson College, but I learned that it's not accredited. Well, I thought, well, all right, I'll just change from going to working at a public school to just I'll work at Christian schools. Make less money. I don't care. I'm not in it for the money anyway. That means nothing to me. As long as I'm doing what I think I should be doing and using what I know for God, then great. Everything's wonderful. So I decided to make the change to Hyles Anderson College, and a person that I had met down there at Pinellas Park and that other guy's church, I think originally, if I remember right, details are a little foggy at this point. He decided to go with me to Hyles Anderson College. Now, before I get too far ahead, I need to talk a little bit more about Dave Hyles. It was Dave Hyles, the son of Jack Hyles, who he had filled out he had to have, the application to Hyles Anderson College had to have a reference from somebody at your church. He filled out the reference and recommended me to go there. So, and it was while I was in his class that his son, Jack David, was run over by his wife in a car. Now, you're 18. You think, oh my gosh, you feel horrible for him, because, he just lost his son, and never assuming that anything like that could ever happen on purpose. Only to find out just here recently that this child had been discovered. I had no idea this at the time. I literally just discovered this surfing the internet, but apparently his records have got out, and the poor little kid's bones had been broken before multiple times, obvious signs of abuse, but Dave Hyles had never been accused of anything. And then here, his wife supposedly ran over him backing out of the driveway and killed him. But when you're 18, you just think, okay, tragic accident. You believe the story. He was still teaching in class. Everybody felt horrible for them, etc. Didn't even learn for years later, that Dave Hyles had gone to several different churches, being moved around for being a pervert, and they were acting basically like the Pope does with the Catholic priests, just moving them from church to church to church, and nobody ever correcting them, letting people know, okay, you can come here, but we need to let people know what's happened so that we can keep people safe. I understand, we have to make people aware of what you did so that, unless, because otherwise you just come out and say, yeah, I'm better now. And then, then they just keep doing it. And that's what he was doing. He was going from church to church to church, having affairs, and not just normal affairs, but really, really nasty things that he did. Starting orgies and that kind of thing with members of the church. Just weird crap, So things that if you're in his class and you're only 18 years old, as long as they teach a good lesson, you never think that somebody who can teach a good lesson could also be a horrible person. It never occurs to you when you're 18 years old that people can live a double life like that, especially if you grow up in a decent house like I did. And it's just beyond your ability to understand. And that's definitely part of the naivety that I'm talking about, that if you grow up in a decent house, you're going to be a little naive because you haven't seen. I'm trying to focus this camera just a little bit. Sorry, I'm making it shake. But you're never going to think that people can give you a clear, reasonable gospel message in church and also be a horrible person on the side. Because you, especially as an INTJ and an Asperger sort personality type, you see the world as black and white. So if they're clear over here, it doesn't make sense in our minds for you to be different over here. You think that people are just good or bad, but they can't be both. Well, the fact is, people can be both, and you can be very good and sincere. You can even convince yourself that you're sincere on one side and turn around and just be trapped on the other side, or you can just be an all-out fraud, really study people and do what you need to do to fool them on Sunday, so that you can get in and infiltrate to where the people are, and also do the horrible things that you do. And I was completely and entirely oblivious to such things. I only cared about my own future as far as serving God. I didn't pay much attention to things like this, and certainly had no ability to connect the dots. None whatsoever. So I do remember, though, one time Dave Hyles, when I asked him a question once, the look in his eye was betraying, and it stuck with me. But I thought to myself, I didn't want to overlook, or I didn't want to look too much into a look in the eye. But in my heart, I kind of knew what it meant. When I mentioned going to a lady's house that really needed help, and the way that he lit up and sparked was in an unusual way. Let's say that. And of course, I was just saying we wanted to help her, get her on the bus to bring her, but to church and stuff. She didn't have a means, but David said he'd had problems before, and he didn't have a driver's license, I think. But I said, well, I'll take you. And he lit up in a way that said a message on his face, but then he caught himself and became more dignified, and oh my gosh, no, Sam Emanuel was trying to call me from Pakistan. Bad time, Sam. Oh goodness. But Sam really needs help, folks. She's lost her house, and if anybody can help her, she's a widow, or not. Her mom's a widow, not her, but she just lives with her mom and her brother, and gosh, their life's been difficult. I've vetted them several times. It's not just somebody that I sent a missionary to their house, American missionary. I sent a local ministry out to their house multiple times, to make sure that they were legitimate people. They're good people over there. I try to help them when I can, but I'm broke, guys. So if anybody has money to help Sam, please contact me. You don't have to send it through me. You can send it to them. I can give you all kinds of proof if you need proof for anything. That she's not some sort of scammer or anything. So, I've known her for a good number of years now, and I've talked to her live, to her and her mom and stuff many times. So anyway, back to my story. Gosh, I just feel so bad for her, because right now she doesn't even have a house. Living as a Christian in a Muslim nation, and the Muslims treat you like dirt, especially if you're female. So it's a horrible place to have to live. And Muslims they don't have compassion except on other Muslims. The Quran teaches them to hate anyone who's not a Muslim. So you're supposed to be mean to other to Christians, and gosh, it's just people that say that Islam serves the same God. No, they certainly do not. They do not know God at all. Islam is an evil, horrible thing, and I don't care if people get mad at me over that. I've seen the evidence of that and how they treat people over there. It's just and you got a whole nation like that, and it's not like they're taking the Quran out of context like some people do with the Bible. No, the Quran, and I'd already made a video on this, tells you straight out about how to treat people that are not Muslims, and it's not pretty. It just tells you straight up in context, by the intention of its author, to treat people the way they do. But to say that the Bible says that, somebody's taking it some wildly out of context. You can say that something says something, but it's not legitimately. It doesn't say that. Now, anyway, so back to the story. So the guy that I took from Clearwater Christian College, he was not a student, but he went to the church that I went to down there. The guy that I took with me he needed a ride. He wanted to join Hyles Anderson College at the same time I did. I took him up. He became my roommate. And the guy was just suddenly turned from Mr. Nice Guy to like the worst person on earth. He was just always like he suddenly wanted to start fighting me and all this weird stuff. Like, and he was bizarre, like total split personality. I thought this is like the third experience now that I've had of people being weird and associated with Hyles Anderson College, and here I am at the college in the dorms, and all of a sudden this guy's personality, like on a dime, was like split right down the middle, and he went from this great evangelist type to a horrible person. He was. I was nice enough to take him free of charge from Florida to Northwest Indiana. Is Hammond is right there, just outside of Chicago, but it's on the Indiana side. Took him up there to Hyles Anderson College and free of charge. And I thought, well, I know you, so I guess we'll ask to be roommates. So whatever. And then, like, as soon as we got in, it was split personality time, and he became a horrible person. You roll over in your bed and he says, stop squeaking in your bed. And then he's like, you want to fight? I can't stand you. I was like, what in the world is with this guy? It was just bizarre. It was the craziest thing. I'd never seen anything like it. Still to this day, I've never seen anybody with that kind of a split personality like that. And then what I discovered up there while at Hyles Anderson College is that they will keep you extremely, extremely busy. Now, when you're at this time, I'd been to Clearwater for 2 years, so I was 20 years old. I was up for the challenge. I was up for working 40 to 80 hours a week at the factory that I quickly got onto. Very hard work, very fast-paced work, and you were expected on the weekends to go out in a ministry and spend the entire day there. You were forced by the college, and I do mean forced, to get out of bed at 6:00 a.m. They'd come and wake you up if you weren't already up. And if they had to wake you up, they would give you a system of demerits, and you had to work off the demerits. If you got too many, they'd kick you out. That's a crazy system. Eventually, I think they split the demerits into two demerits, and then they called it something else, some other kind of demarcation. And if you got too many of those, you just had to work them off, but they wouldn't kick you out because they were losing students left and right. They would come in, wake me up at 6 a.m. If I overslept or something, and then if my drawers were just slightly open or something, and there was always something, or there's a wrinkle on the bed, they'd give you these points. And it got so bad while I was there that I literally had to schedule almost as much time to work off these offenses. That's what they called them. Instead of demerits, they called them offenses. So I had to schedule almost as much time to work off offenses as I did to go to class just to stay in college. And that is just insanity. And I was up there for a long time. It took forever to get through it. While I was up there, I got married, had my first kid and everything. Of course, when you get married, you move off. You don't have to worry about the offenses part anymore. But all that's just slowed me down. So I was in college from 95 to 2000. And when did I graduate? 2003. That's insane, isn't it? 2 years at Clearwater, and the rest at Hyles Anderson College. Is slowly getting, and a lot of it was just you had to work off these offenses to stay in school, and they just constantly found ways to make your life miserable. And this is supposed to be a Christian college. When I needed marriage counseling, they didn't counsel me. They didn't help. It would have been a big help. And Jack Scott, the one who was arrested and is in jail right now for 14 years for taking a child for sex across the state line. He was the pastor up there. I asked him for advice, and he wasn't very helpful at all. Wouldn't schedule time for me. Nobody would. But man, they would keep you busy. But when you're first 20 years old, you're like, yeah, I got the energy. I can do this. I can work 60, 70 hours a week. Start at 6 a.m. on my bus route on Saturday. And they tell you don't come in until the last minute. If you're late, you got demerits, but if you were there before 10:25, you're supposed to be in at 10:30. If you got in before 10:25, they would browbeat you to death and make you look like you were lazy. So you were expected to just be in Chicago all day long on your bus route and just constantly evangelizing. And this was every Saturday for all those years. And at the time, I thought this was great. I mean, this is what I wanted, right? When I was in Clearwater, this is what I wanted. Everybody was apathetic, but here everybody's gung-ho and really wants to go forward. Well, what I discovered is that most of the people there were liars and cheaters. They didn't do what they said. They go up to Chicago, do their own thing, whatever, maybe visit their route for an hour, and the rest of the time they just go do whatever they wanted to do and that sort of thing. And the people were just as foul-mouthed and perverted as they were at Clearwater and everywhere else I've been. And that really bothered me a lot, but I decided I'd already changed colleges. I was going to go for myself to be the best person I could be, to try to get this right, try to learn this. And then through the preaching, through the browbeating that they do, the way that they're very angry at you and that sort of thing, the way they treat you, I let myself get talked into changing it over to ministry, into thinking that, yeah, maybe I should try to preach. After all, I was doing that when I was 14. Maybe that's really what God wanted me to do. I was supposed to do that sort of thing. But I knew that wasn't really for me. Somewhere I was so split on it, and I could not get any counseling. No matter how hard I tried, nobody just made themselves available. Now, if you were a student related to somebody that was on staff at the church ran the college, you could get anything you want. You could talk to anybody you wanted. You were popular. People never bothered you, that sort of thing. And it was really split between the people who they were almost like a higher class of people than you. It was really sad to see. But I decided I was going to stick to myself as much as I needed to, get through it, do whatever I had to do. And since I changed, I was just going to, okay, well, I guess I'll go preach somewhere now or whatever. And maybe evangelize. I don't know. And I did pretty good up there. Brought hundreds of people to church throughout Chicago. One time we had a contest over 6 weeks, and this is a church of tens of thousands of people, probably 20,000. They say it's 20,000. I don't know. It's not like I sat there and counted them. I think they're lying about the numbers there too. I can't imagine there was 20,000, but maybe there was. We did have about 200 buses, and a lot of them were full. So I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe there were 2,000 people. They owned a lot of buildings, lots of Sunday school classes. So, maybe there were 20,000 people. I don't know. But out of a church of 20,000 people during that contest, I brought the most visitors, I brought 89 visitors over that 6 weeks to church with me. So you could say I was definitely fired up, and then not only did you go to school full time, go to work full time, and be expected to get up at 6 o'clock a.m., visit your ministry from 6 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. every Saturday. But on Sunday, you'd have to get up at early enough to drive the bus. As soon as I turned 21, I very quickly, I think it was on my birthday, I took the test the first time. I think I failed part of it and had to take it a few other times to pass, but I got my CDL right as soon as I possibly could after my 21st birthday, so I could be one of their bus drivers. And so on Sunday, I also, in addition to all that other schedule, I would drive the bus. And you had to start pretty early. You had to get your bus from a public school facility, and the church rented those buses, and somewhere way out somewhere in Chicago, and then use that rented bus. And this is in the winter. It didn't matter how much snow was on the ground, we still went. And if you didn't go when there was a foot of snow, you were browbeat to death. You were looked down upon. You were the chicken. You were the cow. And I never was. I was the person who was always there, always showed up, drove in every kind of condition, Never had an accident except for the very first day I drove a bus. I put a scratch on it, but that was just inexperience. Never had never had a problem like that or anything. Kept myself decent the whole time I was up there. But as you're up there, you just start getting more worn down. I remember one time, even, I mean, you put yourself through that kind of a schedule. And after a few years of that, it definitely wears on you. You start taking caffeine pills all the time just to try to stay awake. And I remember coming home one day on a Sunday, just tired as could be, and this was after I was married, and slammed on the brakes with my wife in the car, and I literally said I saw a dragon in the middle of the street. I was losing, like I was just daydreaming or something. I don't know. I was like half awake, half asleep. It's a miracle that I didn't get in a wreck. And a lot of people did up there. They got in wrecks, and they just worked themselves to where they just fall asleep driving their cars. A few people even had wrecks on buses probably because they were too tired. Um, Amazing what they did to you, and there was never any compassion. There was never compassion for you as a student, never any compassion for you as a family, never anybody to talk to. And they had this never-ending message of loyalty. You had to be loyal, something that shouldn't be said in a Christian ministry. Why do you have to tell people to be loyal to you, loyal to the church, loyal to the pastor, loyal to your ministry leader? And what they mean by loyalty is you look the other way when they do something wrong, is really what I finally discovered that it meant. If it doesn't mean that, what in the world else does loyalty mean? I mean, and because that's what they were doing. They were, and I didn't know at the time, of course. I didn't know when people were doing wrong because they kept you so busy doing those three things that you didn't have time to learn about the flaws of the staff or the affairs that were going on. And there was an occasional affair, a staff member would get kicked out of the college or whatever for having an affair, or a student would go to a strip club or whatever and get tossed out. And I thought to myself at the time, well, yeah, there's going to be fakes. There's going to be people like that. And I just dismissed all of it. Never put it together that, well, a lot of these people are just completely fakes from the beginning. This whole system is fake. They're working me so that I don't see the problems and constantly building something for them. Now, I wasn't doing any of that in my mind at all. I was there out of the complete and total sincerity of my heart. However, the teaching was at the college was empty, incredibly empty. Like they didn't teach much at all. These were not good teachers. Some of them were sincere, some of them were not, but they really didn't have a very good knowledge base of much of anything. And so you're going to college all these years and you come out not really learning a whole lot of anything. It's some of the most emptiest education I've ever been around. And I knew it at the time. Clearwater Christian College didn't teach much better, to be honest with you, but they were way better than Hyles Anderson College. They were trying to teach you things. I think, gosh, I don't know. I think for the most part, most of the lessons at Hyles Anderson College were your basic Sunday school lessons. They were just people reading their Bible a little bit and just writing down whatever they thought and then giving it to you as a lesson in a class. And that was probably 95% of the lessons that you learned. And to be honest, I hardly remember any of it. There's a couple phrases that were good, and I still say them. The pastor used to say, everybody knows something I don't know, therefore everyone is my teacher. And I am sold on that phrase as completely legitimate. That's just because Jack Hyles said it and Jack Hyles was a fraud, all this, doesn't mean the saying is bad, It's still true, and you always have to learn in life to filter the good from the bad, because no matter what situation you're in, you can always do that. You can always filter something good out of whatever's given to you. There'll always be good in it. It was interesting there, though, that Jack Scott, the one who was arrested for child sex later, who later became the pastor after Jack Hyles died, both of them named Jack, which I don't think is a coincidence. If you go out and look, Google Polished Shaft, where Jack Scott is preaching a sermon called The Polished Shaft, and he's got this arrow and he's rubbing it up and down and making orgasmic noises while he's doing it. And all the staff just sitting behind him and doesn't say a thing, I'm not even sure what year he did that. I don't remember seeing that sermon in person, but if I did, I was probably passed out, because by the time I got to church, most of the time I'd just pass out of exhaustion anyway. I was always so freaking tired. I slept through half of my classes because it was unreal, the schedule they gave you. Well, it was interesting that Jack Scopp, who was teaching my preaching class for a while, the days that he would show up, he'd hardly ever show up. It's usually had a substitute or something most of the time. But because he was vice president of the college, I guess he could come and go as he wanted. It's kind of a weird thing, but nobody ever questioned it or anything like that. But he made an interesting statement, and I was the only one in the class that noticed and caught the body language of what he said. And he said something to the effect of, when you go throughout different parts of your life, you will ask questions about what you believe that you'll have to overcome to continue doing. He said when you reach 20, you have certain ones, or in your 30s, you have certain ones. And he said in your 50s, and the way that he said it, I was the only one in the class that caught this. He said when you're in your 50s, you'll have the biggest trial of your life. And he wasn't even in his 50s yet. So he was like, I don't know, I think he was broadcasting, forecasting what he was going to do or something. I don't know. It was really weird. Such a weird statement from a guy that's not even 50 yet. And he was still, gosh, he'd have probably been about 38 or 39 then. And the stories that he would tell, the stories that Jack Hyles and Jack Scopp would tell when they would preach were just so outlandish. And you could never prove it because they were always somewhere else. So you just assume they're telling the truth, and you're being told all the time, never question the pastor, that sort of thing. Now, I didn't do loyalty. That was the weirdest thing. That's why I always stood out. Nobody liked me. I had zero, and I do mean zero friends at Hyles Anderson College. Zero. They couldn't stand me up there because I was legit. I was totally 100% doing things out of my heart, from my heart, and they weren't. And I didn't completely understand it at the time, why everybody hated me so much, because they should have, in my mind, they should have wanted to be doing what I was doing. They should have wanted to be doing their ministry. They should have wanted to go out and try to help people. And that wasn't the impression from hardly any of them. I take it back. There was one guy who was nice to me up there, and his wife. That was it. And one faculty member. Everybody else was just a horrible person almost. There was one guy, I couldn't say that he was my friend, but he was sincere like I was. But for whatever reason, he was, different ministries, that sort of thing, different job. But for a while, he went street preaching with me, and he's still to this day a missionary in Haiti. So he was foreign, just like I had a foreign friend in Clearwater. I had one foreign friend oh gosh, I did have one more friend. I forgot about him. He was foreign too. So I had two foreign friends. That's it. The guy named Jose from Guatemala, he was a good friend too. And he worked with me. And he was a worker at work too. Oh, I like people like that. You ever like people that just, they'll actually try to work? I'd go to work and I would try to if they said all you had to do was 20 pieces an hour or whatever, I would try to raise the bar to 30 or 40 or 50, and everybody hated it because I just, thought working was what you're supposed to do. God honors work, that sort of thing. I took it from the Bible, and I said, I'm just going to do the best I can everywhere I go. I was completely sincere at everything I did. I'm telling the truth. So now, except for those two foreign friends, and one staff member and one other person who wasn't foreign, who was married, everybody else I saw there just seemed basically to just be either just a complete dirtbag, a liar, or a cheater. They'd say, oh, we had this many kids on our route or whatever. And it was obvious they were exaggerating, Yeah, I went out and I spent this much time on my bus route or whatever. And you knew what they did, and it had nothing to do with it. just went to a friend's house most of the day or whatever. Just all liars. Nobody cared. It was awful. It was awful to see. And then some of them you knew were perverted and foul mouthed, and you thought, how are they even here? Just an unbelievable environment to me. But I was too busy to keep track of those people much. A lot of people were just so rude to me. It's unbelievable the way they treated me there. Not only the rules, but also just the other students. The amount of hours I put in for them, and to me, to them, I was just scum for some reason. I don't know why. I still don't completely grasp it, other than the fact that, when you're sincere and they're not, I think it like puts a mirror up, and they see themselves for what they are. It was the same problem I had in high school, and same problem sometimes that happens nowadays, even sometimes when the jobs that I've had. A lot of times I've had so many jobs because when you're sincere and decent person and you don't try to do the things they do, it puts up a mirror, and then they get mad at you. And they're not mad at you per se, they're mad at themselves, but they don't know they're mad at themselves. And that's just been my life a lot of times. But there is a disadvantage to having been taught some of the things that you're taught. Of course, while you're there, I did pick up some of the understanding of Hyles Anderson College that influenced the way that I thought. So it changed my theology on certain things, like they believe that women should only wear dresses. And so when I first got married, my wife only wore dresses, and even my first kid was started out that way. So the attitudes that they had towards women were very, very chauvinistic, very angry, very. Well, the woman was to stay at home and listen to the husband and do what she's told. Okay, and I did really believe that. I really, honestly, sincerely did. I didn't pick up a lot of things from Hyles Anderson College like they did, but I did pick up on the chauvinism for some reason. Why that so much? I don't know. I'm not sure why I picked up on that, but not so much the other doctrines. I didn't pick up on the cruelty and that sort of thing that they were to each other. I didn't pick up on the foul mouth, that sort of thing. But my attitude towards women was affected in my mind a lot. And so I was not nice to my wife, and it was very and by mean, I just mean that I didn't respect her as a completely equal person. I expected her to think that her life was supposed to be to do what I told her. Basically, that's really what I thought. And it's funny now, but it was sad at the time. It was horrible. But and I was harsh on her. And I thought, well, and my thinking was just very logical, because if you're an INTJ, your thoughts are just extremely black and white and extremely logical. Well, you went here to the college because this is what you wanted, so this is the life that you must have desired. So here you are. This is what you're supposed to do. And I just expected her to want to be that kind of a person, and never dreamed I never dreamed that women. I didn't understand women at all. I had no understanding, no teaching about it. I actually had a list of things that I wanted in a woman. And so when I would date and stuff, I would check off the list, literally. That's what INTJs do, by the way. If you don't know what INTJ is, you should go look that up sometime. But you have to check off the list. And my list was pretty strict, okay, on a lot of things. If their parents had been divorced, no. But it didn't matter that mine had been, just. But I had this very, very black and white list of. And I wasn't going to accept anything less, And I said they had to get about 8 out of 10, and I think that's what my wife did. I think she got about 8 out of 10 of them on the list. It's funny. It's so funny now. It's just the way I was. My mind has grown so much since then. But gosh, I was, and you never get counseling, and no one ever corrects you. Nobody ever corrects the flaws of what's being taught. So you pick up on this stuff, and it definitely makes your marriage a horrible, horrible challenge. And I never dreamed that my wife wouldn't be on board with what I thought and with what Hyles Anderson taught. And I'm glad she wasn't, but I was not glad then. Right after marriage, she said that she didn't want me to work so many hours and do so much on my bus route, and it just absolutely destroyed me. I never dreamed that. Why? I mean, this is why you married me, right? Because you're supposed to want to help me do a bus route. That's, that's literally what I was thinking. Your whole purpose in life is to try to help me do a ministry, and so now you want to limit me. And this was very black and white to me, that I'd really screwed up in my life by marrying this woman, is what I thought at the time. Took me years to learn that women are about relationships, and that God expects you to treat your wife very well and is very displeased when you don't. And I'm very glad that she had a contradiction and that she wasn't sold out to the ideas of that place. Because it helped God use that to reform me. Okay. And that's good. That's what I wanted. But it was some very rough times that happened because of what I picked up at that school. Now, all around me, and I did not pay attention to them at the time. A lot of them I learned after I got out of school. There were just so many staff members that were being caught fornicating and all this sort of thing, and a whole lot of the students were doing these kinds of things. I was aware of a few of them. Some of them I expected them to get thrown out because you knew they were no good from the beginning. But that's sort of an attitude. It affected me a lot. I completely shut down after graduating my senior year. I basically went into a depression. I actually have my Hyles Anderson College degree behind me. It sat there in that box, I think, since graduation. It's, I've never used it. It has no purpose. It's just a piece of paper. Has no accreditation whatsoever. It's never helped me get a job. But right at the end of the college, I got just unbelievably depressed. Part of it because when I won the contest, that was actually my last year in college. When I won the contest and brought 89 visitors to church, they gave me a paid expense trip to the Philippines to visit missionaries. And when I visited the missionaries, I saw how well their relationship was with their wives. And I was just destroyed by that because I knew mine wasn't, and I didn't know why, and I didn't have enough understanding, and nobody would counsel me, and I just had no understanding of how to get out of this situation. So I was really, really distraught. Went into a depression. I didn't get out of it till just a few years ago. Okay. My attitude towards women was horrible. And so I basically just shut down and just went from job to job to job to job after that. So very rough time in my life. So, and I'm not going to get into all the terrible things I did because I just gave up. I thought, well, if this is the world and I can't do any better, then I'm just going to go do what I want. I was just completely gave up on life. It was horrible. It's like dragging myself out of the mud. Really depressing. So anyway, so that explained, a lot of the people that came out of Hyles Anderson College, a lot of the ministers, if you go out and check, a lot of the preachers have gone out of that college and have destroyed their marriages and destroyed a lot of ministries for a lot of the same reasons as Dave Hyles, starting orgies in their church, or, taking somebody from the youth group or something and fornicating with them, all kinds of horrible things. And it wasn't just a few, you expect a bad apple I'd always expected a few bad apples and discounted that, and was too busy to pay attention. But finally dawned on me just how many of them there were, and it was, I don't know, maybe close to a majority probably of the ones that went out from this college destroyed their lives and their marriages and their ministries, and a whole lot of other people with them. And it was awful. And I did not want to be like that, but I was so depressed I didn't even care. But through a lot of counseling eventually, and through a lot of therapy and help, and even eventually some medicine actually kind of helped, because I just so worn down my body that I needed just some medicine to help me. But I started climbing out of the pit. But most people were not so lucky. Most people really took down a lot of people with them, and turned a lot of people, I'm sure, probably tens of thousands of people against the gospel because of their corrupt nature that they picked up at this school. So where does a corrupt nature like this come from? Where does all this corruption originate? Why is Hyles Anderson College so full of this sort of sexual promiscuity? Why something has to be behind that? Something had to be behind the dislike of women and the lack of respect for women. And I began to learn more about that. I actually have learned more on the internet from why it happened than I did all the years I was there, because you didn't have internet when you were there. You weren't allowed any sort of contact. You weren't even allowed to listen to any kind of music, which I don't listen to music anyway. But I haven't listened to music my entire life. I don't understand the words anyway. When I listen to music, I don't know what they're saying, so I don't listen to music. But I don't know if it's an INTJ thing, or I don't know what that is. But I do not enjoy music at all. I can't stand it. Except for very, very rare, like we listen to the Ball Brothers at our church today, and they're very good music. But I still don't know what they're saying unless I look at the words. but I like their spirit and their attitude. But anyway, gosh, I get distracted easy, don't I? Rabbit trails. So what was behind? What was behind all this sexual attitude that was in virtually everyone there? And I learned that Jack Hyles' daughter had testified an entire lesson on TED Talks, had done an entire message on how her dad was just a fraud at home. And had it's amazing that I went to this college for that many years, and not one time while I was there did I hear anybody ever talk about or even mention that Jack Hyles had affairs and stuff before I'd even got there with his secretary. Which is really weird when you think about it. A couple thousand kids at the college, and no one had ever talked about it. I may have to do a part 3 with this. I talked about I got some in my throat. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to. It'll give me a drink of water or something. But I think I'm going to have to stop it here. But next week, or next time I get on here, I'm going to talk about how I discovered, which is the whole point of my doing this. I want to expose the pedo gang that I believe started Hyles Anderson College. And in the process, I'm exposing my experiences while I was there, and leading up to it, so that you understand firsthand that something was seriously awry there. And good people got hurt. Good people like me that was sincere, that really, really wanted to do the right thing. And a lot of other people like that, I'm sure. So, well, it's been almost an hour anyway. So if I try to do the full exposure on why I think that it was started as a branch of a pedo gang, and I do have very, very good evidence for that, I don't think that I'll be able to finish it. So I think I'm just going to end it here, and I'm going to make part 3 the big exposure on this. And so thanks for watching, and if you're on Bow and Arrow, please like, share, and subscribe, and help me expose the pedophiles.